What's going on, everybody, and welcome back. There'll be no science BS in this video. This is the Apocalypse Challenge. So for this challenge, I plan on making something way out of the norm for me, and that's a spiked mace. Now the goal here for me is to make something simple, use scrap material, and make something gnarly. So I'm gonna head out to my scrap pile and pick some steel for this mace. Stay tuned. So my scrap pile consists of medium carbon spring steel, conveyor and axle shafting, and high carbon cable. I know what I'll use for the mace body, and I'll show you at the anvil. So thanks to drivers that like to snap axle shafts, because it's good steel and it'll make a fine mace. Now the plan here is to keep the splines as the head of the mace and forge away from the splines, creating a handle. Well, didn't take too long to draw out a handle. Now on to making the spikes. So I'll be using a coil spring. This is actually a valve spring from a Wärtsilä engine. Yes, a valve spring. Gives you an idea how big the valves are on these engines. So I think this will be some great material for the spikes. Normalizing a couple grain refinement cycles to make drilling the holes for the spikes an easy task. Sometimes you gotta improvise with what you got. Now remember, you can vote for your favorite build, as this is a challenge, and the voting link is in the description, along with the links to all the other challengers and judges' builds. And a big shout out to our sponsors. Okay, so I got the spikes finished up. I think they're looking pretty cool. Now, one thing I did was shorten them up by 1 inch. They were 2.5 inches, and I did go ahead and make a larger one for the very top of the mace. So I think that's gonna be a cool addition. And a little installation tool. So I'll go ahead and weld a handle to this and head out to the forge and start fitting these spikes. So stay tuned. So I'm using this wood board to not deform the splines and the spikes as they're fit. Now this turned out to be a little tricky standing on one foot, as I'm dealing with an ankle injury at the moment. I did manage to knock over my camera stand during this process and ended up breaking it, so I didn't get fitting all the spikes filmed. Now a little heat will go a long way, and I didn't need to heat it as hot as I did for fitting the spikes, but what I ended up doing was letting the mace cool down to a dull red and continued fitting the spikes, and I may tack weld them later for assurance. Well, I gotta say, I think that looks pretty apocalyptic. You definitely don't want to get hit with this thing. I'm using jute cord for a handle wrap, which will not only make a good grip, but I think will complement this mace. Now that the handle's wrapped, I'm burning the fuzz off from the cord. Then I evenly spread some G-Flex epoxy over the cord and let it cure overnight. A quick sanding with some 120 grit to smooth it out and create a comfy grip. Then I'll treat it with some boiled linseed oil, and this thing is ready to annihilate whatever's in its way.
Well, folks, that's going to conclude this build. Now, I wish I had like an old abandoned vehicle that I could annihilate with this thing, but I did the best with what I got. This is definitely out of the norm for me, but it was a fun project, and I definitely think it fits an apocalyptic style weapon. So I appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions, just ask. Take care.